Hello, and welcome to the Social Media Research Centre. Today we're going to be looking at one of my 2019 general election reports, and it's very important because it's about A/B testing, something that is not really well covered in research or within the media generally. The title of the article is "We need to talk about A/B testing, Brexit attack ads and the election campaign." Political parties using Facebook ads have a powerful capacity to hone their messages. Unlike in the past, where expensive and hard to organise focus groups were the only available space for parties to test their messages, today all the political parties engage in what marketeers call A/B testing. Political parties have never had it so good, as it's us the users who help make this happen through our engagement. Today, party campaigning is Janus-faced. And an example of this is how the parties used A/B testing to campaign on Brexit during the general election. The focus of the messages during the general election were negative, with content especially targeted at men. So what is A/B testing? A/B testing is a method of comparing two or more versions of an advert against each other to determine which one performs better. Depending on what content is used, people will interact differently. Then statistical analysis can be used to examine which variation performed better for a given goal. Given it's such a ubiquitous tool, it's interesting how little academic study has gone into its use for politics, although some work has outlined its use in activism and the Trump campaign. A central approach to A/B testing is via negative campaigning. This uses negative content to attack the opposition and can lead to a more negative campaign environment, reducing voter turnout and increasing radicalized politics. In the past, negative advertising was much harder to use. Testing messages via focus groups was expensive, and the chosen messages were then generally sent at the broadcast level. Broadcast approaches meant you had as much of a chance to put someone off voting for you as you would in pushing someone to stop voting for your opponent. This was because being associated with a negative campaign could in turn isolate undecided voters and reduce trust. Today, Facebook and other social media has allowed parties a safe space to engage in negative messaging, especially content surrounding Brexit and the issues it represents. So, what of the parties being tested? And firstly, we're going to look at the Liberal Democrats. As seen in the first image, the Liberal Democrats were putting a lot of effort into finding the best attack line for Jeremy Corbyn, especially in the context of Brexit. These adverts, seen here, are from late October and use the following text. "We must stop Boris Johnson, but Jeremy Corbyn is not fit to be Prime Minister. Join the Liberal Democrats and demand a brighter future." And you can see associated are 17 different versions, utilising different ways of framing Jeremy Corbyn. From Jeremy Corbyn wants his own Brexit, to Corbyn's Labour Party is being investigated for allegations of anti-Semitism. You can see that the Liberal Democrats were trying out different messages and then from the data were selecting the best. The Liberal Democrats do not just stand as a Remain supporting party, but also used Brexit as a hammer to hit Jeremy Corbyn. With the strong rhetoric used, it's interesting to see the party test out so many Brexit-related attack lines on Corbyn. The Liberal Democrats were engaging in both positive and negative campaigning through A/B testing. In the case of 5 of these anti-Corbyn adverts, the party was focusing heavily on younger/middle-aged men. As you can see in this graph, it's very clear that the party were going after men. Generally, these were older men, but also you can see there was a large subset of younger men also reached. And this would repeat across all of the different adverts, and then depending on the data they would select which one they wanted to use. So the Liberal Democrats are engaging in a relatively clever process in order to find the best messages possible. This trend was reflected also in the Conservatives campaign. The Conservatives were also engaged in negative A/B testing, especially centred upon Brexit. As you can see in the second image, it shows a subset of adverts sent by the Conservatives from the 8th to the 13th of August 2019. As well as trialling various colours and the use of Corbyn, The dozens of adverts show different versions of the Labour leader. Floating arms are seen stuffing the ballot box with Remain tickets, and all the posts featured this associated text, which speaks directly to a People versus Parliament narrative. A narrative which I think really did help in terms of destroying the Red Wall. Politicians like Jeremy Corbyn are only respecting Remain votes and ignoring 17.4 million Leave voters. Add your name now, don't let him get away with it. And as you can see, associated was this very striking selection of images. And of note within this is the use of A/B testing for data gathering. As you can see, they mentioned add your name now, so this would have gone out before election day to gather data on the sorts of voters that the Tories needed to win. And obviously this was part of a very successful campaign by them, because the Red Wall did fall and the Conservatives did extremely well in Leave voting Labour seats. Again, as seen with the Liberal Democrats, these adverts were heavily aimed at men, as well as over 65-year-old women. The People versus Parliament narrative was clearly aimed at older voters. Again, it's these Leave voting, older generation voters in Labour Leave seats that swung the election massively for the Conservatives, and you can see very clearly early on that the party were targeting that group. This is obviously notwithstanding that a large chunk of what you can see also targeted younger people, but generally the trend is towards older people being targeted. Now, as for Labour, the party also consistently used A/B testing, although most of their examples only tested 1 or 2 or 3 variations of an advert. So in essence, the party were engaged in a less complex form of A/B testing. Now, I think this is symptomatic of the Labour Party campaign, that they were not utilising social media in as complex a way and as effectively as the other 2 major parties. One of the best examples of their negative testing of Brexit was seen in the variety of adverts associated with having a second referendum, which they framed in many different ways. And alongside those adverts came this text: Brexit should not be a choice between a Tories' bad deal and a disastrous no deal. That's why Labour would put any Brexit deal back to the people to let them decide. Agree with us? Add your name to our petition. Now, again, like the Conservative advert, you can see here an element is to do with data gathering in terms of asking people to sign their petition. These adverts were sent to a much more balanced group of demographics. They were sent to younger men, older women, older men and younger women as well. And I think that this is part of the failure of the Labour campaign, in that their messaging did not reach the right audience and they didn't have the right thing to say to the right people. So what about a conclusion? Well, all of the parties during the 2019 general election were engaged in A/B testing, especially of Brexit-based content. And the use of A/B testing was split across uses for improving message structure, imagery, elements of content, as well as improving elements of data collection, and in terms of developing better messages. The parties were admixing Brexit with attack lines on leaders, with these ads testing attack lines that we did later see in the campaign. Almost all of the parties were directly targeting these Brexit-based A/B tests on men, especially older men and occasionally older women. The reason for this is obviously interesting, and it is to do with winning the election and the Brexit vote in 2016. And it's also interesting that the Liberal Democrats were also targeting this older demographic, showing you that the party really did believe that it was going to win many, many seats rather than actually going backwards. Now, the use of negative targeted advertising for A/B testing is problematic, because parties are driving a wedge between men and women on an issue that is of equal consequence for all of us. A/B testing is being used in a negative way to hypercharge content designed to demobilize voters. Now, arguably, this is a threat to our democracy, because negative messages on Brexit or other issues can drive voters towards polarizing opinions and thus undermining the very nature of our party-based democracy. The impacts of A/B testing are only really just being seen because this is such a new phenomenon, and it is something that we need to examine more in future, because we, the voters, are being compartmentalized, fractured, and sold different ideas, and this is really a very new phenomenon, largely due to social media. Anyway, thank you for listening, and check out some of my other videos if you are interested. Thank you very much.